Hi, this is Professor Stugard, and in this video we're going to do something a little different than usual. In this video we're going to use AI to help us explore some data using the R programming language. So first of all, I'm going to be using ChatGPT as my AI model in this case, and I am using a paid account. So it is something that I've used before, and it actually has gotten to kind of know me a little bit because of that. And I'll point out maybe when and where that might show up. But I started my session with ChatGPT. What can I help you with? ChatGPT being the I there, I guess. And I said, hi, can you help me explore a dataset using the R programming language? I said, absolutely. I would love to help you explore your dataset in R, smiley face emoji. So again, probably because it is the paid account, it's gotten to know me, and the way that I kind of talk and the way I talk to it, and it is very, very friendly. Now, again, to get started with the actual ChatGPT and exploring data, it asks some really great questions in the beginning. Do you have the data set ready? What's the format? What do you want to do with your analyzation? Summary stats, trends, visualizations, those sorts of stuff. Are you using RStudio, a different interface? Once I have that, I can help you write some R code and guide you through the analysis step by step. So I said, well, yes, I am using RStudio with the tidyverse package installed. My data set is stored in my environment already as penguin_data, and I'd like to make some visualizations. So my first tip, if you are going to be using some sort of AI to help you with your data science type projects, try to be as specific as possible, include packages you're using, what your data is called specifically, using quotes, those sorts of things. But again, ChatGPT goes, that's perfect. Since you're using RStudio, you have it loaded. We're in great shape to get started. We're going to start using ggplot2, which is part of tidyverse. Here's some popular examples. So it listed an entire list. It gave me 5 different suggestions of different visualizations I might want to use. And the first one, and that's what I'm going to use, was a histogram. Visualize the distribution of a numerical variable. And here's the code. Now, what made this really, really, really nice throughout this entire project that I was doing this exploration, the copy button. I was immediately able to just hit that button, and it copied that entire bit of code for me. I then was able to paste it into RStudio, which ended up looking like this. And then I can run the code, and bam, there was my first visualization. Popped right up. I had my flipper length. And there we go. And again, like I said, there were a few other suggestions as well, 5 different suggestions for graphs. I just decided to go with the default to see what kind of happened. But again, I'm a data scientist. I look at this, and maybe because I've explored the data before, I noticed that this is a kind of a weird distribution. It's clearly multimodal, right? We have 2 different peaks. It's not a normal distribution at all. So that's kind of weird. So I wanted to figure out why that was. So I then I asked R, well, let's try to figure this out. And again, it said, once after I had those suggestions, it said, what would you like to do? Would you like to focus on a specific variable, handle some missing data, add filters, customize the plots with labels or themes, those sorts of things? What direction do you want to go next? And then a penguin emoji and a bar graph, which I thought was just quite a nice touch for ChatGPT to include. So I said, well, let's see if we can find some summary stats. I made that graph. Let's talk about summary stats. Can you help me find the summary stats? Absolutely. It's so friendly. Here's how we can get the summary stats for flipper length, group by species, and the package that we're actually using in R. So again, it's loading the package. I don't need to do that because I already had tidyverse, but that's okay. It seemed to want to do that anyway. And again, like I said, at this point, I'm just literally copying the code and trying to run it. So it gives me all this code. Here's what I thought was really, really nice. This was one of the huge benefits at the beginning, at least, where before I even ran the code, it had this pop up. The next lines were, what does this do? Well, it helped explain what some of these functions were. The group by species. Well, it groups by species, which again, some of that's pretty straightforward. The summarize, we're creating the summary statistics. But then some of the other ones like na.rm equals true. So again, if you watch a couple of my videos, we know that na is missing data. Rm means remove missing data. And setting that equal to true means it's going to remove my missing values. But that's not going to be necessarily completely obvious to someone who's just starting out with data analytics and data science and using the R programming language. So I thought that was kind of nice. And then it even tells me what to expect. So again, ChatGPT is coming up with the code. I'm copying and pasting it into a separate window with my RStudio open and seeing what happens. And I thought this was really nice. It tells me what to expect. I'm going to expect a tidy table with this count and then my summary stats. And then it even gives me suggestions. Do you want to export this later on or whatever? But again, I copied and pasted. I ran my code. Gave me this nice table with my summary stats. So the next thing I said is, well, I have these three different species of penguins, the Adelie, the chinstrap, and the gentoo. And again, when I look at the flippers, clearly I have different average flippers, size for each of these, different medians. So I asked it, well, can we try to go back to that first histogram, but redo it so that I can actually see each species one at a time? It gave me the code, I copied and pasted it, and boom, it gave me flipper length distribution by species. And again, I'm just copying and pasting the code that it created. So it created the code with the labels. Everything it did, again, I'm just copying and pasting what ChatGPT told me to, basically. And again, we can see that now, okay, those Adelie penguins, if we look at the flipper length, that definitely seems to be centered around a lower value than the chinstraps and the gentoos, and great. I'm getting some decent data analysis here, right? I'm actually being able to dive a little bit deeper into the data and create these visualizations based on what ChatGPT is telling me to use in RStudio, and of course my own intuition. But here's one of the other really cool parts about ChatGPT is that I can actually ask it any other question while I'm working with it. So even though really the main gist of this process, right, that we're doing right now is to look at data, I asked it, well, what is an Adelie penguin, right? Because I don't know. And I said, an Adelie penguin, one of the most well-known and studied species of penguins, the smallest species found in the Antarctic. Here's some fun facts about them. And again, it lists all these cool facts that it must have, scraped from the internet at some point. And if you want, you can pause the video and look at them if you really care. Here's the part that I thought was really interesting. Why are they special in data? In the Penguin Palmer's data set, which you're using in Penguin data. Now, I never told it that I was doing this. I never told ChatGPT I'm using the Palmer Penguin data, which is probably why my code actually worked to begin with. I was a little curious to see why it was actually able to make these graphs when you need to specifically define what your variables are. But ChatGPT just assumed that because it was penguins and because it was data and because it was the R programming language, it must be Palmer penguins because, again, ChatGPT was trained on the internet. And so it scraped, millions and billions of websites to create this library, right? To create this database that it pulls from. And really, again, it's an association. It's making probabilities. What's the next most probable thing to type? And because of the frequency of using penguins, right, which would be like kind of, we're thinking about penguins in one direction and data in another direction. When we think about those two things together, it really hyper focuses on this Palmer penguin data set, which is the way that ChatGPT was trained. So it knew that this was the Palmer penguin data set, which is probably why it's working so well. And again, it says that it's often used in data science projects. And admittedly, I've actually used this exact same data set in several of my other videos. So it's definitely building off of that knowledge scraped from the internet. Then I asked, would you like to create visualizations or more fun comparisons, a bunch of other stuff. So I thought back to one of my other videos and I said, well, can I actually create a model to predict whether a penguin is an Adelie based on its flipper size? And it says, yes, absolutely. So friendly. You can create a simple logistic regression model to predict whether it is an Adelie penguin based on its flipper length. Logistic regression is appropriate here because the outcome is binary, Adelie or not. And that is 100% accurate, and that is a great description. And in this case, I think ChatGPT worked as a great teacher, explaining exactly why we're picking the model we're picking. And again, hopefully we understand what a logistic regression model is. And if you don't, again, ask ChatGPT, and it can help fill in some of those blanks if you don't remember. But it did create then a step-by-step guide to creating this new logistic regression model and create the new binary variable. So again, we had to mutate, create a new column. Is it an Adelie or not? And again, I copied and pasted, fit the logistic regression model. So create a model. Again, I hate the fact that it's calling this model. That bugs me a little bit because I feel like we should be more specific. My object should be penguin model or something more specific, because just calling something a general model I don't think is really great code. But again, I'm trying to copy and paste and just follow exactly what it's doing. But I ran this code. Boom. I got this giant table, and again, this kind of looks like a mess to probably almost everybody. Luckily, again, it did say step 3, we're interpreting this model. The coefficient for flipper length tells you the log odds of being in a deli penguin and how they change with flipper size. A negative coefficient means that as the flipper length increases, the probability decreases. And so, again, if we look, here's flipper length in that table part of the coefficients. We have a negative. Now, the fact that it knew it was a negative is because that Palmer Penguin data set has been used so frequently that, again, as ChatGPT was trained on the internet, it knows, or at least it associates the fact that creating this logistic regression model based on this specific variable, it's going to be negative because that's what it was in the past. It was trained to know that answer. But in general, when you're dealing with data, it is very important to recognize that ChatGPT is not seeing these outputs that RStudio is giving it. ChatGPT is only making assumptions based upon the data it was trained on from the internet. But yeah, it is a negative coefficient. And again, we can see, right, if we go back to that visualization I made, clearly the smaller it is, the more likely it is. So as it gets bigger, there's a smaller probability that it will be in a deli, which means we would have that negative coefficient. So again, that all seemed pretty accurate. Then it gave me some other optional steps. I want to predict the probabilities. And I said, yeah, let's see how well I can predict the species of penguin based on that flipper size. So I ran my code and I got my first error. Ran the code, copied and pasted. I got an error in my mutate function. And then caused by error, the predicted prob must be size 344 or 1, not 342. So again, I know what the issue is because I'm a trained data scientist, sort of. At least I pretend to be one on the internet. And I know what the issue is, but I wanted to see if ChatGPT could help me out. Can it help me debug my code? So I copied and pasted that line. And I told ChatGPT, again, I was very specific. I was like, I got an error message on step 4. The message was, good catch and great observation. Okay, so again, this is the paid version. ChatGPT kind of knows me a little bit. It knows that I like to be complimented. It knows that I have a very, I like to have my ego stroked and have my self-esteem boosted by people complimenting me. And so, yeah, ChatGPT is set up that way so that I keep using it. So that made me feel good that I had a great catch, even though it was literally just copying and pasting an error code. Okay. But the important part here, though, is that that error usually happens when your data set contains missing values, that NA, which causes the model to be fit on fewer rows. And in this case, it was very specific about that. We can try to add the predictions back, and let's fix it step by step. So I went through option 1, drop the NAs first. That's your safest fix. So again, I was like, yep, let's go with that. Copied and pasted, ran it. It actually worked perfectly now. I was able to create my model. And then I thought it was cool. It gave me this optional step to visualize it. And again, look at all that code that we got going on there. Copied and pasted it. And now that fits my logistic regression curve. So again, logistic regression means it's going to output a number between 0 and 1. We interpret that 0 to 1 as being a probability. And we can see where that shift takes place on the horizontal axis. And I thought this was actually kind of a cool idea. I never really thought too much about visualizing what that logistic regression curve was going to look like. But again, we can see that 50% probability, where it was 50% and higher, would be the flipper length less than, it looks like about 195 or so to me, maybe 197. And then above that 197, then the probability drops below 50%. And again, with our model, we could tweak this and tune it, and we can do a bunch of other fun stuff. But I kind of want to move on here because, again, it was really nice. It explained to me exactly why this error happened. It excluded the rows with missing data. That's how that specific function works, the GLM, the generalized linear model. And then filtering the data ourselves would ensure consistency. So again, it gave me really nice suggestions for not running into these errors before. And then I asked me, would you like to expand the model with more predictors? Are you curious about checking the accuracy? And I said, yes, let's check the accuracy. Can you please help me check the accuracy? Because again, be polite. If you're polite to ChatGPT, It will associate polite words with its responses to you as well. This is a tip I learned from a podcast called ChatEDU. It is a great, great podcast about AI and specifically AI in education, but there's tons of tips about AI as well. It's run by Matt Mervis, who is a phenomenal podcast host, and I'll try to link to his podcast in the descriptions. I suggest that everyone, give it a shot, check it out. But again, I wanted to check the accuracy. He says, yep, let's walk through step by step. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to convert the probabilities into classes. We're going to compare the predictions with the actual values. We're going to create a confusion matrix, check the accuracy, all those great stuff. So again, step by step. Convert the probabilities into predictions. And again, mutate. We're using the if-else statement with our predicted probability, which I thought was pretty cool. Again, I'm just copying and pasting. Step 2, we're going to create a confusion matrix. And then it was nice. It actually told me what that would look like and what the confusion matrix is with our true negatives, true positives, false negatives, where it makes our predictions accurately, where we have type 1 and type 2 errors. And again, we could get into the weeds, and but for now, we're just going to kind of move on. I ran my code, and there we go. That's the table that it came up with. And so then hopefully we can see that did pretty well, right? A 0 with the 0, a 1 with the 1. That's not so bad. It also gave me quick code to check the accuracy, and I ran that, and I got an accuracy of 0.827, so, 82.7% accurate, which is, pretty good for a model that we didn't really tune at all and based on just one variable. So, again, I'm pretty happy with that, and I thought that whole thing worked out pretty well. It did ask me if I wanted to then do some more advanced metrics, and I said, yeah, let's really dive into this. And it told me to load a package and run some code, and I immediately ran into error problems, and it was not able to help me at all. ChatGPT was just stuck. The error messages, it was stuck. I did some research on my own, and the issue was that it had me load a package that had previously been updated, and so the functions no longer work the same way. R is an open source programming language that lots of people have created lots of packages for. There's been tons of updates. There's been updates to those packages that people have created. Things don't always work the same, but again, ChatGPT has been trained on the entire internet. So RStudio, that's been around for over 30 years, is going to have a lot of different software updates and things that don't work, and ChatGPT was not able to help me with this. What it was trained on was old information based on old packages and old software versions is probably the best way to think about it. And it just completely broke down. So it was great with some of these beginning things, but not so great with other things. But then I wanted to see, because again, that was all based on a package that is very well known in the data science world, especially with data science education. It's all over the place. It was able to scrape it. I want to know, can it help me with a different data set in R? And of course, it's absolutely, I'd love to help you do that because it's so polite and it even has emojis. And again, it was very nice. It's very specific. To get started, what data set are you using? Where'd you get it from? What do you want to explore? Do you want to keep using tidyverse? All that other good stuff. So I said, well, this data set is from a CSV about jobs in data science that's labeled as jobs_df in the environment. So this is actually a list of jobs in data science that was scraped from Indeed back at the very end of like 2024 or so. I made sure that it was scraped from data that was after ChatGPT was probably trained. So hopefully ChatGPT has no idea what this data set is at all. Again, it's one that I just came up with myself. But again, I said, great, you had the data set loaded. Let's ready to dig in. Let's start by getting a sense of the structure, and then we move into the exploration. So I thought that was really interesting because, again, it doesn't know this data set now because it's never seen it before. It's not part of the Palmer Penguin, so it doesn't know the structure, or at least doesn't have that association to the structure. So we got to start there, which I thought was great. We want to peek at the structure, and it had given me a couple other suggestions first, but we'll get into those. So first, glimpse the structure, glimpse DF, that's what I wanted to do. And I also said, well, or maybe let's just jump into a visualization, paying job titles. It gave me a bunch of suggestions and salary trends by location. Again, a bunch of stuff. It was kind of interesting because it said maybe the variables are listed as salary. Maybe location is listed as the variable location. It was wrong. It was not listed the same way in the data that it thought it should be when it was doing this initial step. But again, it really did suggest that I do the glimpse jobs_data frame. so that it can suggest better ideas based on my actual data. So again, I ran that code, and again, it's the first thing that I do with every single data set that I look at. So I was like, oh, that's pretty smart. Anyway, we have all of our different variables. And I said, just copy and paste. So I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. So I copied and pasted, and this is what the copy and paste looked like in ChatGPT, which I was like, that is ugly. I don't know if that's going to be any good, but yep, turns out it was good. ChatGPT told me I was awesome. I did a great job copying and pasting. So again, thank you, ChatGPT, for making me feel great. I knew there was 12 variables, over 9,000 job listings, a lot of rich data. So let's start with a few useful and interesting ideas. Top paying job titles, salary by experience level. And again, initially it suggested, well, you can look at salary, but it turns out that variable we actually wanted to look at was salary in USD. And so again, you can kind of see that in there that it's now using the right variables because I was able to copy and paste my result from Glimpse. It also said maybe we can do salary by work setting, top locations by average salary, which I thought was really cool. Like, these are great suggestions to kind of get started. Or it said, help with a specific question. Do you want to look at, is remote work higher paying than in person? Do large companies offer better pay than small ones? Which job categories pay the most? And a bunch of other cool stuff, right? So I wanted to know about average salaries. So I said, hey, can we figure out what are the highest paying jobs based on the job titles? Which jobs have the highest paying average salaries? Gave me the code. I don't have it here. I ran my code. This was the result. And I see analytics engineering manager. And again, it just gave me the code. I was like, that's great. We're done. I did exactly what you wanted me to do. Now, me being a seasoned data scientist goes, an analytics engineering manager, a job at $400K, and man, another job at $375K. Like, that is a lot of money. That does not seem right to me. So I basically told ChatGPT that that didn't seem right to me. That seems way too high to be an average salary. And I said, well, thank you so much, because I'm always going to be polite. But when I look at paying job titles, can you include a count of how many jobs are listed with those titles? Because again, my intuition is telling me that if that's the average, maybe there's something off there. He goes, you got it. So polite. Including a count alongside the average salary is a smart move. It's complimenting me. I love it. It helps you avoid being misled by job titles with only 1 or 2 entries, which is exactly what my thought was. And so it said that I was still in the right thing, so updated the version to tell you the top 10 highest paying jobs with their average salary and the number of listings. So gives me the code. Now I have it. Copy, paste. Now it includes a column for the count. And yeah, those top couple of jobs had just 1 or 2 each, which that probably was why the average salary is so high, because you have an outlier, just one single position that was listed out of 9,000 different job listings. Now this I thought was kind of cool, because optional. Now, do you want to sort by salary and count? Do you want to see jobs that are only well represented, meaning more than 10 listings? You can add a filter. Yes, let's add that filter. And so it adds the filter. It's not exactly where I would add my filter, but that's okay. We do the code however you want, right? It still worked. I copied and pasted, and now I'm seeing only the jobs that show up. AI Architect is now at the top at a cool $250,000 a year, and we have at least 12 different instances of that job being offered. We see, machine language engineer down there as well. There's like 106 job titles there, applied scientist. So again, I think this gives us a much better idea of what's going on. Can we adjust this so I only look at entry-level jobs, though? Because maybe I'm just getting into the job market. Because absolutely, filtering for entry-level jobs is a great way to see what early career roles are paying best. And man, I got to tell you, like, the fact that it keeps complimenting me, it's working for me. But again, here's my code now. Again, we can see we're actually getting some fairly complicated code. And again, this is a data set it's never seen before. So it's using my data. It's using what my variables are, and from what I was able to copy and paste in using the glimpse function, it even knows like entry level, right? And under experience level, that's my variable. It knows that one of the things is entry level, and that's exactly how it's spelt and listed, so that it's going to filter it properly. But again, I copied and pasted the code, I ran it, and bam, there are the top 10 highest paying entry level jobs with at least 10 observations in that entire data set, research scientist at the top, research engineer, then data engineer, then a machine learning engineer, then a data science, and a data analyst. And so again, those are our entry-level jobs, and we can see where the salary goes down. And here, again, I'm looking at multiple variables, right? I am looking at, obviously, salary. I'm looking at the job count, and I'm looking at entry level. And it was able to put that all together for me in a really nice looking horizontal bar graph with everything pretty much appropriately labeled. And I was pretty happy here. So that's what I decided to stop. I said, thanks for all. Thank you for all your help exploring data today. Because again, we're going to be polite back and forth. I wanted to keep complimenting me. I'm going to keep being polite to it. So I said, hey, can you do one more thing? Can you make a picture of a penguin doing data science at a computer for me? And sure enough, it did. And I love that little guy. I mean, ignore the fact that the computer's facing the wrong way, but I thought ChatGPT did a pretty good job making that little picture for me, and it made me happy. So, my final thoughts here as I wrap up this video about using AI to explore data. First of all, the good. Number one, the ability to copy and paste working code. Man, that made life so easy. That one button to copy and then being able to just Control V in RStudio. Man, that was really nice. Part of me worries that maybe it was too nice. We might get a little bit lazy. I don't know. But for me, that definitely goes in the good category. Also, the suggestions to explore data, they were almost all pretty spot on. With the given data set and different ways to explore, different visualizations to use, it made some good suggestions at first. And I definitely used those, and I was happy with the results. Also, I loved that it was able to explain what some of those functions were doing. The group by, what does that do? Well, it'll tell you what that does. I thought that was awesome. It absolutely made this a great tool to probably help with learning how to do data science and incorporating AI. The bad. There was some bad here. Number one, some of those software updates made the suggestions unusable. As I mentioned earlier, we update code all the time. There are different software versions. And if this version of ChatGPT, which is trained on the whole internet, was trained on a bunch of articles written before the software update, it's not going to know that or be able to associate it. And again, it's not connected to the internet. It can't look up the answers to that unless it's been trained on the answers to that. So there are definitely some issues with some of the higher level things. But again, for things that have been around for forever, it seemed to work pretty well. The bad, it made some big assumptions. Again, it assumed I was working with the Palmer Penguins data set. What if I wasn't? What if I had collected my own data about it? Then I think those suggestions probably would have been pretty bad. And again, that kind of goes back to that same idea that it's trained on the internet. It's only going to, it's they spend those millions of computer hours, well, maybe not millions, but, millions of computer processors working in parallel to train this data and make those associations. So what gets associated with which, right? Which is pointing in the same direction. How do I predict what the next best word is going to be based upon those associations? And yeah, there were definitely some big assumptions that it made. Mostly good, but yeah, I don't know. I would be very, very worried about the assumptions that it did make. And then it still cannot ask the same questions as a knowledgeable data scientist. So, again, noticing, that the histogram was not really a normal distribution. We have multimodal. ChatGPT does not see the result of my code, so it can't really interpret it for me. I mean, maybe I could copy and paste some stuff in there, and maybe it would be able to help. And then again, with the jobs in data science, not recognizing that, hey, just finding the top average salaries might not be the best way. We might want to see how many job postings there are with it. Again, these are questions that a knowledgeable data scientist would probably see immediately, and ChatGPT is not necessarily going to know to look for it. So where do we end up with this whole ChatGPT thing for analyzing data? First of all, I think you got to understand what those functions do. ChatGPT can tell you, but again, if you're just copying and pasting code, it's not going to be great. And in fact, I have heard anecdotally that sometimes in the private sector, people have tried to use ChatGPT to create larger models and do a bunch of code and write whole programs. And because of those associations and those assumptions it's made, it's just included random lines of code from, again, very popular data sets that are used. So again, you ask it to do some linear regression, and then all of a sudden it's pulling in, the housing data sets, or doing stuff that doesn't actually apply to what's going on, but it's just, this has such a strong association with linear regression, means you're looking at a housing data set, that it starts pulling those things in, and that's not great. And unless you know what it's doing and you can read the code yourself, you're kind of be stuck. So I could see this as a great tool, especially for beginners, especially for debugging code. You get an error, trying to figure out what that error is, especially with some of the basics. I think it works great as the kind of a tutor, a private tutor for doing some of the basics. It makes some good suggestions, especially, and we didn't talk about it much in this video, but creating those labels and color schemes for the graphs, it can really help with some of those customizations once you get things working, but you really need to understand what you're doing first to have it be super useful. But those are my thoughts, at least. If you have any other thoughts or things you've noticed while trying to use AI to make code, and again, I use ChatGPT. There's probably other platforms that might be a little bit more appropriate, but I know ChatGPT is kind of the default. Leave some comments. Let me know. I think this is kind of fascinating and kind of opens up a whole new world of possibility for exploring data, which is just like so much fun, right? I can't imagine anything better to do on like a rainy afternoon than explore data. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned some things. I hope we have some interesting takeaways. And as always, I hope you guys take care of yourselves.